Hi, it's March 2018, New York City. Beatrice, who has been living in New York City for 6 years, was talking to me about if and how she drinks water. In her early 30s, she explained that although water has been and still was a secondary beverage in her life, she has recently switched from drinking bottled water to using a Brita filter. I was curious if there was any change, and she said there was. As a new resident of New York City, she perceived the city water's chlorine odor to be rather strong compared to other places where she had lived. She also felt that New York City tap water was much cleaner than elsewhere in the US, as it came from the mountains, as she put it, a belief reinforced by her many tests of leaving the water in containers overnight in order to see if anything accumulated at the bottom. There was no accumulation, she said, but insisted, quote, "It does have an odor, I reckon." Well, it's not that I reckon. I know that water comes from the New York City infrastructure, which is pretty old, and I believe that nobody reaches the pipes to clean them. Before, I purchased water, and I wouldn't drink tap water because I was living in an older building. And I had this feeling that if water passes through the building pipes, it turns dirty. Somehow it makes sense because it passes through my building to get to me, even if it is extracted clean from somewhere else. End of quote. Beatrice's interpretations combine perceptions of the city and her building as old, the invisibility of presumably decaying pipes, quality of water, and semiotic clues about filters. These interpretations and connections traced by Beatrice exceed her domestic space, reaching out to the public water network and its component, and highlighting internal tensions and contradictions that are representing a rich object for the ethnographic gaze. In many parts of the US, large numbers of residents avoid the direct ingestion of water transported by municipal water infrastructures, turning to costly and labor-intensive water distribution devices such as bottled water and filters. Writing about agency and coordination, anthropologists Penny Harvey, Casper Brun-Jensen, and Atsuro Morita note that, quote, "The characteristics of infrastructures emerge out of interactions between multiple agents with competing interests and capacities, making it exceedingly unlikely that they will function according to the plans of anyone in particular." End of quote. That is certainly the case with the use of pitcher filters in New York City apartments. Despite the fact that 7 out of 10 New Yorkers believe that tap water in their city is better than those of other cities, about half of the city residents use water filters at home. That turns filters into an unplanned mass capillary accretion on the city's water infrastructure. New York City has sufficient, widely accessible, and generally biologically safe tap water provision, yet half of New Yorkers use filters for domestic consumption, surpassing in number consumers of both bottled water and direct tap water. Just as flows of water to cities and within them across their uneven class and racial geographies are significant political achievement, to use Lisa Bjorkman's phrasing, making tap water socially acceptable for users through filtration is no less of a significant political achievement and site of power, yet it is an understudied ethnographic location. The widespread use of filters raises several questions about their technopolitical rationalities, such as what institutional gaps do filters bridge? How can this mass accretion be understood, and what are the politics of domestic tap water filtration? To capture filter manufacturers' connective capacity, I work with the analytic of catch-all technopolitics, which I ground in analogy with the catch-all party thesis developed in comparative politics by Otto Kirchheimer. The thesis, as initially conceived, captured the way catch-all parties cross-cut social divisions by drawing upon vague and flexible doctrines instead of clear, substantive, and ambitious political ideals, prioritizing marketing strategy, pragmatism, and immediate electoral success over long-term political mobilization. By extension, I developed the idea of catch-all technopolitics to interpret the way tap water filters are marketed to diverse arrays of residents as solutions to widely different discontents surrounding public infrastructure. making plural promises to fix a range of public discontent. Such technologies offer no single master technopolitical rationality for their use. Filter manufacturers enter into conversations with many infrastructural publics, promising them pragmatic improvements to tap water in ways that foreground short-term, often imaginary gains. Filter manufacturers rely on three components in the technopolitics of tap water filtration. These are water and its physical and imagined qualities, infrastructural publics and their numerous projects around tap water, and users and their diverse ways of using and misusing filters. Let me discuss briefly each component, starting with tap water, the very stuff of filtration. Filter manufacturers ignore the geographical variability of tap water composition. Although filters have the capacity to generate trust and offer the semblance of control, their technopolitical properties should be evaluated against placed and water-specific hydrosocial contexts, as the qualities of water do in fact influence filters' ability to deliver. This was, in a nutshell, the point about pitcher filters bitterly expressed by Ashton, an investment banker in the water industry, during my lengthy conversation with him. Ashton saw several fundamental problems with the existing pitcher filters, but he emphasized water composition in particular. Water composition and its toxicity vary dramatically by state, region, and municipality, he explained, directing me to the Zero Water Filter website, which carries totally dissolved solids figures for each zip code. A one-size-fits-all filter is snake oil, Ashton believed, insisting that one cannot expect filters to perform well across systems that transport water with very different properties. While Ashton emphasized ignorance, deceiving technological universality, and the erasure of water particularities, his insights underestimated the power of the imagined qualities bestowed on tap water by the watershed. These imagined qualities and the city's water are a site of hydropolitical power. The municipal water company presents the totality of its hydrosocial territory as a synthesis of upstate nature, city culture, high-tech arrangements, and security preparedness. Unlike that of many other cities, New York's water infrastructure has, since its inception, managed to avoid the water treatment ontology, prioritizing water protection at the source over retroactive treatment. This hydrosocial arrangement allows the DEP to emphasize the natural character of city water. Such natural elements include the rain and the rivers that feed the upstate reservoirs, whose water is then transported to the city by gravity, another natural process. Let me turn to the second component of tap water filtration, that is the infrastructural publics and their discontents and politics around tap water. Filter manufacturers attempt to attach their products to many social ties. Filters are successful because they claim to address many threats. Varied distrusting publics with many different political and sensory water projects enlist domestic filters. Ethnographic and survey data concur to indicate that the negative perception of pipes is the most common reason why people profess to use filters. Fear of pipes creates an infrastructural public around pitcher filters, making filters participants in the pipe politics of the city. In many older cities like New York, aging pipes have become a source of fear for many residents. New Yorkers' acceptance of tap water and their reliance on filters are shaped by and intersect with a pipe's perceived decay. One survey of waterworks in the US reports that, quote, even if the water leaves the treatment plant clean, it has to travel through miles of old pipes where it comes into contact with contaminants, end of quote. Filter manufacturers intercept and amplify many residents' distrust of water pipes, generating something that I call pipe phobia. Pipe phobia is a generalized, diffuse, and often unlocalizable fjord pipes, mixing sensory experiences of tap water, heightened risk culture, and infrastructural opaqueness. Almost without exception, interviewees did not substantiate fears of pipes by direct experience, but rather by assumptions about their buildings, the city as a totality, and its old age. One thing that I always asked whenever the issue of pipe decay came up was whether the interviewees had a sense of the condition of the pipes in their buildings and apartments. With only 2 exceptions, pipe phobia was generic, rather than reflecting a contained experience with plumbing. Pipe phobia is a form of precaution, in other words, of being wary of and conscientious about pipes, based on the sense that, to quote from French philosopher François Guéry, a danger is there in the form of a present hazard, yet it is not already there acting and harming, but it exists in the future and the conditional, as a threat, a potential harm to be avoided. End of quote. Storing tap water in pitchers encourages visual inspection. Blurring tap water's messy industrial origins and distinguishing it from the piped origins of tap, thus individualizing, authoring, and resourcing it. The new and ostensibly modern filters enhance the properties of water. Filters are complicit with the watershed, renaturalizing the water flowing through the pipes, emphasizing its anti- and pre-urban natural morality, and removing, mentally, the city from the city water. Filters' third catch-all ability is to attract users with diverse technical competencies and widely variable ways of using them. Filter manufacturers do not produce technologically savvy users, but rather enter into conversation with residents' wide-ranging discontents about public water. The manufacturers actually actively undermine the centralized expertise of municipal water companies, decentralizing it, and substituting themselves as the authoritative source on public water. Unlike centralized water production, filters are hypogoverned. Only about 7% of filter manufacturers are officially certified. A certification is voluntary in most states. Even if manufacturers are certified, the meaning, usage, and associations made possible by filters cannot be reduced to or scripted by their vision, thus opening up a rich field of diverse ethno-hydrological practices. Like Beatrice, other filter users often do not follow carefully even the problematic instructions given by filter companies. Some people that I interviewed, including Beatrice, forget to replace the filters for months, even years. To wrap up, filters generate social acceptance of and increased trust in tap water, allowing them to participate in multiple, often unconnected stories and discontents that populate the city's water infrastructure simultaneously. The social acceptability of tap water and the lack thereof seems to be located in particular components of water infrastructure, such as the pipes. Sometimes these components become active for users, throwing off new sites of power and legitimization, as well as ethnographic objects, such as water filters. Finally, filters enable a broader methodological inquiry into how to engage ethnographically with tap water, expanding the questions asked by political ecology and the political economy of water, often centered on the availability of water, access to it, and its biological safety. I have tried to carve out a space of ethnographic exploration around the social acceptability of tap water, taking breakdown, exclusion, biopolitics, and necropolitics as ethnographic objects and analytic entry points, leaves ethnographers less prepared to understand relatively safe and inclusive water provision systems, such as New York's, giving the impression that they have less anthropologicalness and less culture. The relatively functional New York City water infrastructure thus emerges not as a culture of no culture, devoid of political tensions, but as a rich ethnographic site. Thank you.